Well, and he even uses the word here, quoting God, when God says, I won't break off my loving kindness from David, nor deal falsely in my faithfulness. Mm-hmm. That's strong language to say, if I do change it or don't fulfill it, I am false. He's holding God accountable to his promises.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the It Stands Written podcast. My name is Braden. I'm with Justin, Elijah, and Ernest, and we are in our series on covenant theology and dispensationalism. Last episode, we did not make it to the Davidic Covenant. We tried, but we got stuck in Romans.
We gave Justin a New Testament book of the Bible, and I should have known that we would never make it out, especially Romans.
That is 100% my fault, but I am committed to getting
we are disciplining ourselves in this episode to stay on the Davidic
Covenant.
Covenant.
Is going to keep us structured and on track.
Yes,
I'll do my best.
Yes.
But if you start wandering into the New Testament, Justin, I'll slap you.
Okay, well, I am going to have some New Testament
slapping sound. That's all it is.
That's me keeping us on track.
Only because the New Testament talks about the promise to David. Go on.
Yeah. But I said in the last episode, I'll say for this one too, the basic idea of the Davidic Covenant is a promise for an eternal kingship under the Son of David, reigning from Zion. We're going to get into what that means. But we're going to start in 2 Samuel 7 to answer the question, what is the Davidic Covenant?
Yeah, 2 Samuel 7, the context of that is, remember David, what he wanted to do? He wanted to build a house for the Lord. Mm-hmm. Right. And God's like, nope, because you're a man of bloodshed. And my house will be a house of peace. Which, did you know this fun fact? The name Solomon is a derivative of the Hebrew word for peace, shalom. This is one of the reasons he got that name, is he would be the one who would build that.
Yeah.
And so David did everything he could to prepare the way for that, pick the place, bought the spot, all that kind of stuff. But God says, actually, David, I have something better for you.
Yeah.
You think I need brick and mortar? Do you think I need a house? Like the heavens are my footstool.
Yeah.
Like you have no idea. I don't dwell in those things.
And to clarify, to ask you, Justin, when he says to David, no, you're not going to build it because you're a man of bloodshed, he's talking about that after what happened with him in Bathsheba, correct?
No, it happened in Bathsheba's in chapter 12.
Oh, okay.
This is just all of the murdering he did for all the, well, not murdering, but all the war he did.
I think you'd have to say they were dead. Yeah.
You mean
killing?
All the killing.
Yeah.
All the war and killing he did with the Canaanites and everybody else around him.
Did he do that against God? Did he do those against God's will?
No, it was God's will. God ordered him, like, you're going to go and you're going to conquer all these people around you, and you're going to wipe them off the face of the earth. Nevertheless, because you have shed all of this blood, you're a man of bloodshed, and you will not be the one to build my temple. That's going to be your Solomon.
He's not calling him out for sin. To say he was disqualified for that.
Yeah.
And remember, Saul has slain his thousands.
And David is 10,000.
David is tens thousands,
Yeah, it sounded... Hearing it first, it sounded like it came off as a you're not allowed to because of this and that.
Well, that is true, but not because of sin,
Not because of sin, though. It's just, this is not part of my plan.
But if you would have given David the choice between what God said I'm going to do instead versus the house, David would have still chosen what's now here.
Is there a contrast between that and Solomon making peace with all these nations?
No. His peace with the nations was a sin.
Well, okay. That's right.
Absolutely was a sin. Yeah, he took his name way too far.
Okay.
Outside of the will of God.
Okay.
But here in 2 Samuel, he makes a covenant. Now, we're going to read this, but you're going to notice that he doesn't actually use the word covenant. So one of the questions we need to answer is, how do we know this is the Davidic covenant? Yeah. And there is a very simple and very helpful answer for that. But Braden, would you read verse 8 and go down all the way really to verse 15? Do it to 16.
Now, therefore, thus you shall say to my servant David, thus says the Lord of hosts, I took you from the pasture, from following the sheep, to be ruler over my people Israel. I have been with you wherever you have gone and cut off all your enemies from before you. And I will make you a great name.
Okay, slow down right here. I will make you a great name. Here they come. Yeah. This should also sound familiar for those who've been tracking with us or who know the Abrahamic promise. Mm-hmm. This is going to sound like, feel like, it's not the same. This isn't the Abrahamic promise reiterated. This is going to sound like the Abrahamic promise, though. So that would have immediately caught the attention of all the hearers. Okay, keep going.
And I will make you a great name, like the names of the great men who are on the earth. Verse 10, I will also appoint a place for my people Israel.
Did you just see that? I will also appoint what?
A place.
This is huge. So you're going to have a great name, and there's going to be a place. So the question is this made David only, or is this made for those beyond David? No, this is made for David's descendants, right? These are David's people, right? My people, Israel.
Yeah.
So this is again, do you see it? Verse 10. I will appoint a place for my people Israel. So here again, just like we saw in Abraham, just like we saw with Moses, Deuteronomy 30, just like we're seeing now here in Davidic Covenant, there is going to be an actual geographical place, unmistakable, absolutely crystal clear. Okay, keep going.
I will also appoint a place for my people Israel and will plant them, that they may live in their own place and not be disturbed again, nor will the wicked afflict them any more as formerly.
Okay, hold on for a second here. Like they'll be there and they'll stay there.
Yeah.
And they'll be undisturbed there in a place where wickedness no longer afflicts. Okay, keep going.
Even from the day that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, and I will give you rest from all your enemies.
That's a lot of people. All your enemies.
Yeah.
I'll give you rest.
The Lord also declares to you that the Lord will make a house for you.
Okay, interesting. So David's progeny, David's house. I keep interrupted. You keep going.
When your days are complete and you lie down with your fathers, I will raise up your descendant after you, who will come forth from you, and I will establish his kingdom.
Now the question is, who is this? So we want to know
Solomon and Jesus.
Yeah, okay. So there's a near-far fulfillment of this.
Yeah.
And we know it's near because, keep reading, verse 13 and 14.
He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever.
Okay, hold on. So he's going to build the house. Who builds the house?
Solomon.
Solomon does. But his kingdom will last how long?
Forever.
Yeah, Solomon's going to die.
Yeah.
Okay. So this promise has to extend beyond Solomon, but it absolutely includes Solomon. Okay, keep going.
Verse 14, I will be a father to him, and he will be a son to me. When he commits iniquity, I will correct him with the rod of men and the strokes of the sons of men.
So that cannot be Jesus.
Right.
Right? This has to be Solomon. And by the way, that exactly happened in Solomon's experience, and he was corrected pretty severely, right?
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Verse 15, but my loving kindness shall not depart from him, as I took it away from Saul, whom I removed from before you. Your house and your kingdom shall endure before me forever. Your throne shall be established forever.
You hear the forevers in there?
Yeah.
So even though, David, you're a sinner and you're going to die, and even though your son is also a sinner and he's going to build my house, your house, the Davidic line specifically, will have an eternal kingdom. So this is huge. Not just an eternal kingdom, on a land.
Yeah.
In a place.
Yeah.
David's descendant. So to qualify for this, you have to have the lineage of David, Luke 3 and Matthew 1. You have to have a son from David who will come and who will rule and reign for how long?
Forever.
Yeah, forever.
Yeah.
He'll have a throne and his kingdom will last forever. And even though he sins, Solomon does. Don't worry. I'm not going to do like what I did at the house of Saul, where I was cut off. Saul was cut off. Remember? No, this will last forever. And what would happen? There was a delay in the fulfillment of the forever. Why? Because wicked king, wicked king, wicked king, wicked king, wicked king. All right. So no matter what, this is what we saw in Romans 3, which we won't go back to, I promise. But this is a promise that's unilateral. There's no condition here. Did you read any condition? No. In fact, you heard contrary to the sin.
Yeah. He says, I will.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And forever, forever, forever.
Yeah.
So this is God. This is to David and this is to the nation of Israel. We just read it.
So is this, the way it's written here, is this similar to the various like messianic passages you see in Isaiah and Jeremiah, where he's sort of, in the same way that he sort of runs together the first and second coming of Jesus, he's running together both Solomon and the messianic fulfillment altogether?
Absolutely. Or even like with Abraham, but through Isaac.
Right.
But through Jacob. Now down through David. So you're tracing the lineage and the seed here. So if everybody's keeping track, you have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, bunch of people, David.
Right.
Bunch of people, Jesus. Or we should say a bunch of people, Mary and Joseph from both ends, boom, Jesus.
Right.
So the legal and the birthright of David's promise, which, by the way, can we fast forward to the New Testament for a second?
Oh, no.
Okay, I'll just have you read it. So don't anybody turn. You'll allow it. Okay,
just
thank you.
once.
In the Gospel of Luke, remember Luke, Gabriel comes to Mary, and it's in Luke chapter 1. What does he say to Mary? Do you remember Luke 1:32 and 33?
I do. I've read this many, many times because it's part of the prayer book. But, and behold, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, and he will be great, and he will be called the Son of the Most High. And the Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and there will be no end to his kingdom.
Clearly the fulfillment of that promise right there.
Yeah.
Now, there's forever, there's no end.
Yep.
He'll reign over the what? House of
David.
Yep. Keep going. No, it doesn't say the house of David. He said he'll sit on the throne.
Sit on the throne of
his father David over the house of
Jacob.
Jacob, who is this?
That's Israel.
Jacob's other name is Israel.
Yeah.
So
Forever.
you can't get away from, watch this, the promised visible kingship of the son of David in the land of Israel, ruling and reigning forever. You cannot escape it. So that promise is like crystal clear. So one of the questions we have to ask in this process is, why does that get muddied? How does that promise get muddied? We're like, yeah, no, actually, that's not true at all. Well, the promise of a kingdom of one of David's descendants reigning in Israel, over Israel, you can't undo that. You're not allowed to do that. You can't go, well, that's all spiritual. You can't do that because it was clear and literal in the Old Testament. We just read it in 2 Samuel. It was clear to Mary through Gabriel. That's exactly what he would be. Mm-hmm. So we can't monkey with the text, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, and I think it's good to hit this from various angles because, you will hear the objection and it's framed in various ways and it's thought of in various ways. But the standard covenantalist objection is that, well, we would agree. We would just say that Israel has expanded to include the Gentiles, that the Gentiles join Israel, just like you saw Ruth join Israel in the Old Testament. And in the same way, now we join Israel. We just don't join Israel by doing a circumcision and sacrificing a bunch of sheep. Now we do it by eating and drinking the bread and wine and being baptized. And so, he reigns over Israel and Israel is saved. And even ethnic Israel is saved. But just that the Gentiles are made part of Israel. So why doesn't that work?
Because there's nothing in the text that says it was made to Israel plus. Mm-hmm. And to say it expands after it's already been ratified, that's not allowed because Galatians 3 and 4 say that. Romans 11 that we saw last time said that. This is made specifically the house of Israel. What's to say that your marriage to your wife couldn't expand to include other women?
Well, because,
because you made the promise to her. Yeah, so, that's okay. There's a lot of cute girls out there, Ernest. And I mean, you don't want to be selfish. You want to make yourself available to other women. Let's just say it expands to a whole bunch of women.
Yeah. Well, and I know we've brought this up before, but sometimes it's worth going over again. And they will say then, well, in Matthew, he explicitly says, if I wanted, I could raise up sons of Abraham from these stones.
Right.
So then he did.
He didn't raise up stones.
Well, he didn't literally, but he's saying if he can raise it up from stones, then he can clearly raise it up from people who are not ethnic Jews.
Yeah, right. Sure. But see, the argument doesn't fit. I mean, we still have to answer the question, how can we and we saw this in Ephesians 2.
Because we know we're saved.
Well, strangers to the covenants of promise. Mm-hmm. We had no promises.
Right.
Paul says in Romans 11, Ephesians 2, we had no covenants. Mm-hmm. So that's clear. None of these promises were to us.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing that the covenantalists are wrestling with. It is they see that we are made part of the redeemed people of God. And so they're trying to make it fit.
Right.
And so it's this is how we make it fit. We join into Israel, we all become Israel, and that's how we make it fit. But of course, we talked about previously too, even in Romans, you still see him making a distinction so that we're not exactly Israel. We are redeemed, but we're not redeemed by becoming Israel.
That's right. Thank you. That's actually a very important distinction. Can you say that again?
That we are redeemed, but we're not redeemed by becoming Israel.
Yes, that's a critical. Because to believe in Jesus, whether you're part of the nation of Israel or you are redeemed. Mm-hmm. There's only one way of salvation.
Right.
You're redeemed by Christ through faith alone in him, and you become redeemed. Absolutely. The distinction between the ethnic Israel and the church, that's clearly maintained. Mm-hmm. Okay, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, looking back at the text, and Justin's point is you can't just spiritualize that.
Right.
You can't take something that's written clearly on its face and say, oh, that means something completely different. I read another author was speaking about this recently that I was reading, but it applies to this too. This was written especially in the 2 Samuel passage that we were just looking at. This was written in historical literature. It was not written in apocalyptic literature where there's lots of figures of speech and symbols.
Great point.
Mm-hmm.
It was not written in an epistle. It was not written. It was written in a gospel, and it was referenced in a gospel, and it was written in 2 Samuel, which are both historical literature.
Yeah,
the entire context and tone and everything about that writing is, this is what happened, this is what will happen.
Yeah. So you need the burden of proof from a text to which we are accountable that explicitly states that there is some other way to understand that clear passage other than the one that is so crystal clear. Mm-hmm. And in the absence of that, we have every right to refuse to accept any kind of modified alteration because my system prefers it.
Yeah.
I think that's key.
Yeah, and that's really well said, that you can be like, well, you can make it say that, but the facial reading of the text should stand.
The facial reading of the text. Well done. Okay.
I work in legal terms, and the facial reading is a common term when it comes to statutory interpretation. But like the facial reading of the text should stand unless there's very clear reason to do otherwise. And in this case, you can make it all stand and it doesn't get you into weird schizophrenic places where like you're saved in 4 separate ways depending on the time of the year or whatever. And that like there's still one redeemed people of God, and you can make it work without having to spiritualize away a bunch of things.
That's good. One redeemed people of God. That's important language. Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and that'll become important again for us, but let me read you a passage here in 1 Kings, just to kind of underline and punctuate what's been said here, because Solomon did blow it. And one of the other arguments is, well, the curses for unbelief resulted in the nullifying of the promise and then the transfer to the church. That's another, in replacement theology, they'll argue differently than just it was expanded. They'll say, no, it was replaced. So there is nothing for ethnic Israel, period, which is actually where most covenantal theologians go, is there is a complete transfer over to the church. Even though the literal curses came to Israel, the blessings for Israel get figuratively applied to the church.
So covenant theology says that, or at least what you're saying, most covenant will say that all of the Old Testament covenants get transferred to the church.
The blessings do.
The blessings do.
The curses got applied literally.
To the church.
No, to Israel.
To Israel, but the blessings get transferred
figuratively
to the church.
So we take a verse in half, we cut it in half, we go literal and figurative, Israel and the church, curses and blessings. So they'll bifurcate the verse and separate them and go, yeah, those curses for Israel, they happen literally and actually just the way it said. But the blessings that were promised, no, those go to the church figuratively, like the land. You don't get a land. You're just redeemed.
God makes a covenant. He says something in one statement, and I'm going to take half of what he said and apply it one way, and take half of what he said and apply it the opposite way.
Yeah, that's abusive to the text.
Yeah, what they generally try to argue is that they will say like, well, we're doing the same thing that you do with all of the Advent passages of Jesus. That like there's one verse and half of it applies to the first time he came, and the second half applies to his second Advent. So in the same way, but like this, you can do that with the Advent passages of Jesus. Because
you have explicit verse in 1 Peter that says you can do that.
Right.
This is one of those things where they didn't understand the spirit of time in which they said that he would suffer and reign. They couldn't figure that out. We know from two comings is what Peter says in 1 Peter chapter 1. But it's also not a literal versus figurative.
Yeah.
There is a far.
That's exactly the point I was going for. That like, it's not literal figurative. You're still interpreting the whole verse the same way. You're just saying, but there's some stuff that happens in between.
Yes.
You're not saying that like, but this part of the verse gets turned on its head.
Yeah, or that's not fulfilled, or that's broken or changed, or given to somebody else. Yeah. Okay, so the verse, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, Justin, you mentioned that the covenant side will say that the promise to Israel, the promise of God is nullified, and now it's just fully for the church. I think we've gone through it before, but Paul makes the argument. He says, they did not enter in because of their unbelief, and it's saying, just because they unbelief, that doesn't nullify the promises of God, does it? May it never be.
Right. Yeah, that's clutch. It has to be.
And the promise of God we're speaking about this time is David.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
I love when you use the word clutch.
You like that?
Yeah, because it's totally not from your generation.
It's
like our generation.
No,
this time, the last time you said that.
It was just so good that your generation stole it from mine.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Okay, so let me finish here. Because the acid test for the faithfulness of God and the Davidic promises would Solomon under Satan's following led such a dissipated rebellion of his own by making these peace treaties with foreign nations, taking their wives, 700 wives, 300 girlfriends. It was a mass casualty.
Yeah.
And the very chapter he did that, it says he did that. It says they turned his heart away from the Lord and he hadn't followed faithfully like David had. Listen to 1 Kings chapter 11, starting in verse 9. The Lord was angry with Solomon because his heart was turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice and had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods, but he did not observe what the Lord had commanded. Now, remember what we read in Samuel? He said, even if he sins, I'm going to correct him and I won't do like I did to Saul, right?
Yeah.
Here's the moment of truth. Verse 11, so the Lord said to Solomon, because you have done this and you have not kept my covenant, see that? My covenant and my statutes, which I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom from you.
Now,
hold on.
Didn't he just say, I'm not going to tear it away?
Right. Watch this. and will give it to your servant. Nevertheless, I will not do it in your days for the sake of your father David.
Because of the promise.
Because of the promise,
David.
that's right. But I will tear it out of the hand of your son. However, I will not tear away all the kingdom, but I will give one tribe to your son for the sake of my servant David and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen. Jerusalem is the city of Zion. This is the place where that promise that the Messiah would reign. So he said, my determined commitment to Israel, my determined commitment to David and the promise of the kingdom, even though you've blown it wickedly, you will experience my correction and it will be severe. But because I've remembered my promise to David, I won't do it in your lifetime. And I won't do it to you because you were in that original covenant. You were one of the participants named in the covenant itself. And even though you've blown it so bad, I won't do it in your lifetime. Now I'm going to take you out. I'm shortening your lifetime. Like right now, boom, he dies. Like he dies in the next couple verses.
In this chapter that we're reading, this passage that we're reading, Kings 11, verse 10, or verse 11 rather, he says, because you have done this, you have not kept my covenant and my statutes. Mm-hmm. That covenant refers to the law, correct? Because the covenant he makes with David is unilateral, not bidirectional. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing for Solomon to keep. But for the law that is a bidirectional, you have to keep my covenant.
Yeah. How do we know which covenant? So he just says my covenant. At this point, there's already several covenants floating around.
I think he's talking about two different covenants though here.
There's the Mosaic, there's the Davidic all floating around.
Because he says, you did not keep my covenant, right? Mm-hmm. I assume that's a
bilateral agreement,
right?
Yeah.
So that you did not keep the law, right? Which I have commanded you, right? He didn't command David the covenant. I will surely tear the kingdom away from you and will give it. So because you didn't keep the law, I will, and this does align with the covenant of the law. Mm-hmm. He says, if you do right, I will bless you. And if you don't do right, I will curse you. So in verse 11, he's talking about the law clearly. In verse 12, nevertheless, I will not do it in your days for the sake of your father, David. I'm going to keep my covenant that I made with David.
Exactly right.
Because I made that covenant to David.
That's
I will
keep
it.
The promise of an heir, the promise of a perpetual kingdom, the promise of a forever fulfillment to that. Now, I mean, the Davidic line was kept through to Jesus, right? I mean, we know because we can trace that Matthew 1, Luke 3. So we know that Jesus is in that line is intact, and it came to Jesus who rules and reigns. And by the way, didn't disappoint like Solomon, didn't fail, right? But where is the king reigning in Israel on the throne in Jerusalem, David's throne? Where is he?
I mean, currently he's not here.
He's currently not here. So he must be yet coming. Mm-hmm. So there is. What's that?
Netanyahu.
Not Netanyahu, unfortunately, no.
If you listen to some people online, seriously, they stub their toe in the morning.
No, that's a good point. You have this is also, by the way, the sign of the covenant. You don't need an additional sign. This is the sign when you see him reigning in Jerusalem on David's throne. That's the fulfillment of that promise, which is where you don't see it anywhere in Scripture until
Revelation 20.
Revelation 20. Yeah, exactly. When he sits up his kingdom on earth in fulfillment to all those promises.
Mm-hmm. So when he's saying to Solomon, "I will surely tear the kingdom from you, but I'm not going to do it in your days. I'm going to do it not in your days for the sake of your father David." At what point is the kingdom torn from Solomon?
So that's his son. You remember Rehoboam and Jeroboam. Mm-hmm. So Jeroboam was one of Solomon's servants. Yes. Not literally a servant like wash your feet servant, but he was one of Solomon's underlings. Mm-hmm. He was part of Solomon's royal administration. He would become the king of what was called Ephraim or Northern Israel, which was all the northern tribes of Israel.
10 of them, yeah.
Yep. And this was because you remember Rehoboam, his son, when he becomes king, the people come to him and they say, Solomon's taxes, they were really high. If you lower his taxes, we'll be loyal to you. And so he goes and he confers with his advisors and they're like, just lower the taxes and it'll be fine. Then he confers with his young friends and his friends are like, hey man, you should just be even more mean. And then they'll be scared of you. And so he's like, you thought Solomon's taxes were bad? Mine are going to be 1 billion times worse. And they were like, all right, peace. We're going to go follow Jeroboam then. Yeah. So that's what happened.
So
right
basically,
after
the kingdom splits right after.
Yeah, divided.
So his death is really the tearing from the kingdom, the kingdom from him.
Yep.
Well, when he dies, that's when it tears.
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. That's the timing of that. But to the point, Elijah, you're making this point, God made a promise to David. And see, even though there was a breaking of the Mosaic covenant, there was not a breaking of the Davidic covenant. Mm-hmm. And that line is intact. And the one who was coming, who will fulfill all of that, will truly reign. And so that's what we've been waiting for. And that's what's so cool about Revelation 20 is it's there. But see, if you're going to spiritualize Revelation 20 and go, well, that's not it, then what do you do with this promise? When does the promise to David get fulfilled? Is it canceled? It can't be canceled. It's a unilateral promise.
Yeah.
Is it spiritualized? Well, that's what is often referred to. Now there is one footnote here, and we don't have to go deep into this, but in Acts chapter 2, when he says that Jesus was raised, the descendant of David was raised and ascended to the right hand of the Father, and is told to sit there until all his enemies were put there as a footstool at his feet. Jesus began to reign. The Lord and Christ, David's descendant, began to reign on heaven's throne, and yet must come again to rule on earth from literal Jerusalem, because that's the promise. The promise was made of a literal throne in a literal place with a literal descendant of David sitting on that literal throne. And that's exactly how it's described in the book of Revelation. So if I start monkeying with Revelation, you realize what I got to undo in God's faithfulness in the past? I can't do that. I'm bound to this text to not do that. Can we look at another verse?
Yes.
Psalm 89.
Phew, it's Old Testament.
I know, right? I'm resisting. In Psalm 89, because the challenge is still we don't have the language of covenant used.
Right. It's never been explicitly called covenant.
Not yet.
So are you sure it's a covenant?
Well, read Psalm 89.
Okay.
In fact, I'll have you read it, Ernest.
Just from the top?
Says promise.
Yeah, take 1 through 4.
All right. So Psalm 89, starting in verse 1. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever with my mouth. I will make known your faithfulness to all generations. For I have said, mercy shall be built up forever. Your faithfulness shall establish you in the very heavens. I have made a covenant with my chosen. I have sworn to my servant David.
There he is.
Your seed I will establish forever and build up your throne to all generations.
Okay, that's so explicit. Selah. Selah, which means what, by the way? Do you know?
Interlude.
It's an interlude, but what kind of interlude?
Rest,
ending,
right?
I've heard it's contested. What exactly it means?
There's some question. Yeah. It was a musical interlude, so because it was put to music, this would be like the musical,
bridge section.
Before you said verse 2. But it was put there specifically to go stop and think.
Right.
Yeah, it was a dwell on what you just heard. Did you just hear that? God is so faithful. David's seed will endure, Jesus, and he will have an everlasting throne. Okay, look at verse 19 of the same chapter here.
So just to emphasize, verse 3, I have made a covenant with my chosen. I have sworn to David, my servant.
Yeah, covenant, Davidic covenant.
Yep.
So the language of covenant is right there, unmistakable.
And that's where we get that.
Also, to be clear here, this is not a point of contest between basically anyone who interprets the Bible. Covenantalist, dispensation, they all agree the Davidic covenant is a thing. If you ask any covenantalist with this, they'll also be like, yeah, there's a Davidic covenant.
Yeah, for sure. It's just how is it fulfilled, literally or figuratively? Yeah. Now or when Jesus ascended or... Okay, look at verse 19. Once you spoke in vision to your godly ones and said, I have given help to one who is mighty. I have exalted one chosen from the people. I have found David, my servant. With my holy oil I have anointed him, with whom my hand will be established. My arm will also strengthen him. The enemy will not deceive him, nor the sons of wickedness afflict him. But I shall crush his adversaries before him and strike those who hate him. My faithfulness and my loving kindness will be with him, and in my name his horn will be exalted. So again, there's this affirmation. You can see it in verse 28. My loving kindness I will keep for him forever, and my covenant shall be confirmed to him. So I will establish his descendants forever, and his throne as the days of heaven. And if his sons forsake my law and do not walk in my judgments, if they violate my statutes, don't keep my commandments, then I'll punish their transgression with the rod and their iniquity with stripes. But I will not break off my loving kindness from him, nor deal falsely in my faithfulness. My covenant, do you see this? Unilateral. I will not violate, nor will I alter the utterance of my lips. So exactly as he swore it, he says, I've sworn in my holiness once, I will not lie to David. His descendants shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. So the faithfulness of God is attaching his own integrity to the fulfillment of David in a land in Israel on the throne in Jerusalem through Messiah. Crystal clear. Unmistakably clear. So what is there to argue about?
Well, if he didn't say he wouldn't spiritualize it.
What if we want to change?
Except he says I wouldn't alter it. So.
What if we want to change the meaning to fit our system, though?
Then we probably should. Well, here's a good question. Because the psalmist asks this question. There's a reason the psalmist is saying this. He's just not like, hey, I woke up this morning thinking about David, I'm going to write about it. under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. He asks in verse 49, where are your forward loving kindnesses then, O Lord, which you swore to David in your faithfulness? Where is it? Where is it? You said it. I'm not seeing it currently in my experience. What's happening? And the answer is what?
He's looking for a physical reality.
Well, he is.
A literal.
Yeah, he is, for sure. And is the fact that there's been an interruption to the line through the disobedience of those kings, is there a sense in which, okay, well, then God's promise is canceled?
No, I think there's times when, and we see this where David yearns to understand, but he doesn't doubt God. Or he doesn't, I don't know, but he doesn't doubt God's faithfulness, but he questions, how come I can't see it though?
Yeah, and this isn't David speaking. This is the man speaking about the covenant that God made to
this
David.
This is a different psalmist?
Yeah, his name's Ethan the Ezrahite.
That's cool.
Yeah, Ethan.
But
good, strong, masculine name.
It's a good, strong, masculine name right there.
What you see here is, as Elijah pointed out, that, you see him waiting for a literal fulfillment.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And you also see him saying that, like, I have seen the judgment part,
right? But
that doesn't mean it's canceled. I still expect it to happen. Just as he said. Just like with the earlier promises where we saw in Joshua, where it said everything that God had promised had been fulfilled.
Right.
And so the covenantalist will say, so this means that it's fulfilled and it's done now. And yet later on, you still see people yearning, still see people saying, where is that promise?
Right.
Which means that promise is still coming. It's not done yet.
Right. Well, and he even uses the word here, quoting God, when God says, I won't break off my loving kindness from David, nor deal falsely in my faithfulness. That's strong language to say, if I do change it or don't fulfill it, I am false. He's holding God accountable to his promises. Because right now he's in such distress where he yearns for that reality, but it's not yet. And so waiting for that fulfillment, well, that's why Revelation 20 is so clutch.
Clutch. Can I ask a question?
It's a question.
Can I ask another one after I finish this one? I've had a friend ask me this. When we're talking about spiritualizing or having literal interpretations of Scripture, I said, look at a lot of the promises in the Old Testament, all of them that I can think of that were literally fulfilled. And so it doesn't make sense to spiritualize these things. He said, but, one of the examples that he pointed to was, look at Abraham's seed. That was given to Abraham as an understanding to know what was to come through his seed. And Abraham understood that literally, but I think it was Hebrews or Galatians that points to saying that, no, actually, it's the single seed, Jesus, and all that are Jesus's, that are children of God through Jesus, those people receive the blessing. So that's an example of, here was something that was said literally in Scripture and was understood literally, but then it turns out in the New Testament, we have clarity that was meant as spiritual adoption through Christ.
No, not at all.
Okay. Expand on that for me, please.
Part of this is going to be when we get to the end, when we talk about how do we as non-Jews participate in the promise.
Okay.
And that's where Paul is going to argue that because we are in Jesus and Jesus himself was the ultimate fulfillment of in your seed, all the nations there are blessed. So he is the fulfillment of that, but seed in the singular. Paul argues under inspiration that though you would have read that in Genesis and thought many, and it did apply to many, New Testament revelation says that Jesus, who is the ultimate fulfillment of that, you're in Jesus, that promise now is applied to you. So that's how that becomes ours.
We can't apply a spiritualization to things that are read literally, but when someone under inspiration in the Scripture explains that, we can take that.
Yeah, exactly. Because under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, they interpreted by giving new revelation that explains that and our participation in it. We can't go, oh, well, because it wasn't a spiritualizing. A literal Jesus who was from literal Abraham literally died on a literal cross to endure a literal curse for us to bring us to a literal God. So that's all still literal. It's not spiritualized. But the inclusion becomes with New Testament revelation, that mystery, the further explanation of what God had in mind. This is how it includes us. So he's talking about process.
And
there.
This is also, we were talking about this off air earlier, Ephesians 3, where Paul says, no man knew the mystery before, understood it, at least in its fullest extent.
That's right.
That the Gentiles would be saved.
Yeah, it on purpose.
God hid it on purpose. So this would be a good example of where Paul can define that for us under inspired
Because
authority.
new revelation that wasn't disclosed in the Old Testament, now with the coming of Christ, brings a fuller understanding. Not that changed anything that was said
Right.
or altered
But it
it in
revealed.
any way, but revealed there was a fuller understanding
Yeah.
that now we have that's completely consistent with what God
Because
has
there
said.
was a literal fulfillment of Abraham's promises.
There was a partial fulfillment of that because the whole forever part, that's there. I mean, you see that even here. So there has to be they'll dwell in that land securely. So yeah, they experienced it, but then their sin, it took them out of the blessing of it, but they're coming back.
Yeah.
So all that to say, even the millennial kingdom, because you pile these on top of each other, right? The Abrahamic covenant includes the fulfillment of those promises in a land, geographically identified to Abraham as the nation of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
The promise to Moses in Deuteronomy 30, even though your people sin, I'm going to bring them back to a land, same land. David, hey, you're going to have a son reign on your throne in that same land. Not different promises, but promises that overlay with one of the blessings that included in each of them separately is that same land. Does that make
stack
sense?
on top of each other.
Yeah. So you have three different covenants that all answer or have some provision in them where that same land is referred to. The same thing, by the way, teaser trailer, is going to happen in the new covenant.
So one of the things that I hear a lot is that covenant theology believes that the covenants are stacked on top of each other or combined or all come together, whereas dispensationalism believes that there's different dispensations in which these are active or in force. But you're saying when you stack these on top of each other, you see these in the millennial kingdom. How do I?
It's different. It's not that the covenants have different dispensations in them. The idea of different dispensation, we talked about this episode 1 or 2, where the outworking of God's program unfolds in a certain way. That's what dispensationalism is saying.
Yeah.
And Ephesians does use that very language in chapter 1 and chapter 3 to describe that. But there is the promise to Abraham is not the same as the promise to David. Those are two different promises.
Yeah.
There's overlap in that the same people are made the promise.
Yeah.
And the same land is spoken of. Here's the land identified by Abraham. Here's the land with the Messiah sitting on the throne in Jerusalem. Same land, different promise, same people targeted.
And to put a point on that, from what Justin was saying, in regards to the dispensations, there were like older dispensational schools which would break apart that like there was the Abrahamic dispensation, and then there was the Davidic one, and then there was this one, and then that one, and etc. Typically there was 7. But the just studying here and what we're saying here is not so much that like there were specific dispensations under which God ran the world under some different administration.
Right.
It's just like, it's at this time he revealed this thing, and then at this time he revealed this thing, and then all of them will come together and be fulfilled simultaneously.
A culmination. Well, and so for example, you have pre-fall. That's what might be considered a dispensation. What was life like before the fall?
Right.
And then after the fall, but before the law. What was that like?
Yeah.
Paul talks about that in Romans 5. Well, sin is not imputed where there is no law, but the fact that people died proved that they were sinners. So sin was a reality.
Right.
So you have from the fall to Moses, and then with the revelation of the Mosaic covenant and now the giving of the law, people understand the rule of God in a way that they interact with it in light of that. From law to Jesus, from Israel to church, like those are points not where salvation changed or God changed, but as God functioned with his people, there was an unfolding of certain events.
Yeah.
So that's what really is meant by dispensation. There's different kinds of ways
that's
that
helpful.
Functionally God worked with his people.
That's
Tribulation, same thing. Kingdom, same thing.
Yeah. God, he relates to his people in different ways, in the same way that like in the Old Testament, he asked people to be circumcised. And in the New Testament, he asked them to partake of the bread and wine and to be baptized.
Yes.
Same salvation, same God, the same redemption, but and I will use a very covenantalist term here, he administers things in different ways throughout time.
That's right. Well, and that's exactly the word Paul used in Ephesians. So you're free to use it.
Yeah.
Here's another verse in Psalm 132. In Psalm 132, this is maybe one more of those clutch verses that you're going to need. Verse 10, for the sake of David, your servant. So this is Psalm 132:10. For the sake of David, your servant, do not turn away the face of your anointed. The Lord has sworn to David a truth from which he will not turn back. Okay? Of the fruit of your body, I will set upon your throne. He's quoting now that promise. If your sons will keep my covenant and my testimony, which I will teach them, their sons shall also sit upon your throne forever. Now, what's that mean? Does that mean that the promise is conditional? Some would argue yes. No, what he's saying is, insofar as your sons stay obedient, guess what? They'll be the ones that sit on that throne in perpetuity until the one son that we're all waiting for rules and reigns forever. If they don't, guess what? Jeroboam, Rehoboam, that whole break apart and the wicked kings afterwards. But look at what he says. He goes back, verse 13. The Lord has chosen Zion, which is called the city of David, by the way. He has desired it for his habitation. And this is what God says. This is my resting place forever. Here I will dwell, for I have desired it. Where is here? Zion. That's actually a city in Jerusalem. Elijah, when we go to Israel, you're going to see it. So right next to Jerusalem is the city called Zion. You know what Zion means? Sunny. Oh. It's an elevated place in Jerusalem, which is already elevated, where the full 360 panorama means that there's never a shadow on it. It's actually shaped like a crown. This is actually really cool.
It's a land that's elevated?
Yeah, it's the land that's geographically elevated.
Terrain.
David, we're going to walk there. David's palaces, we will see the foundation stones of David's palace on Zion. This is the actual seat where Jesus will sit. We're going to take you to the spot. Now, you know what you're also going to do? This is a blow your mind. You're going to stand right there and you're going to go, this is where Jesus is going to sit. But you're going to say, and by the way, this is where David looked out and saw Bathsheba. Wow. So on the so he makes this covenant. Think about the audacity of David. Now, just to make the problem of Bathsheba so much worse. He knows right here where Zion, and it's not a very big geographical spot. You're going to stand there and you're going to look down, you're going to see this ravine and valley. It's all elevated and propped up, shaped like a crown. He stands there at his palace on which the Messiah will reign forever. This is 4 chapters after this promise. And he looks out and he sees a woman bathing, trying to get herself clean in the presence of God Levitically, right? In the purity of her uncleanness. And he decides to do something dastardly. Seizes her, he takes her, he sleeps with her, and then concocts this plan to have her husband killed, and the story all covered up. So David himself is the utter fail. But where he failed, Jesus will. You'll stand in that spot when we go there. You'll see the foundations of his temple. You'll see where Bathsheba lived. You'll be able to point it out. You'll be able to throw, we throw a rock to the spot where she would have been bathing.
Yeah.
You'll stand there in that spot. But David failed, but the son of David will not. Sons of David failed, but the great son of David will rule and reign forever in that place.
So in 2 Samuel 7, when it's saying, your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me, your throne will be established forever. So that was, given to David and then given to Solomon, but he was ripped from the kingdom, and then Solomon's son, and then just kings over and over, the kingdom torn from them. It's ultimately fulfilled in Jesus. Would you say that that's ultimately fulfilled in the millennial kingdom?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And that's why Ethan, the Ezrahite, was going, what's going on? Mm-hmm. There's not a king reigning.
Yeah.
They're captive. All this crazy breakdown and us trying to rebuild and restore it. God, you promised. You promised there would be a king. Where is he? You said you wouldn't turn back. Where is he? Oh, he's coming. Oh, he's coming. And he would come to offer himself as a king, and they killed him. He will come back and reign as a king, and he will rule with a rod of iron.
Amen. No, that was so good looking at the Davidic Covenant. We did a good job getting to it and not getting sidetracked.
Good job, Justin. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, it's only a little bit of the New Testament, but it was great.
Yeah, it was relevant.
Yeah. But no, listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Remember to send us any questions that you have. Look through these passages for yourself. Study the scriptures. We are just so glad that we're able to bring these to you and to be able to talk about them. I know it's encouraging and informative for me, and I hope it is for you guys as well. But we thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the It Stands Written podcast. And Lord willing, we will see you on the next one.